Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member
Kennedy for Ministry of Labour, Social Security, and the third sector. $10,223,131.
Honourable Member for St. Peter. Hmm? Yeah. I took it. I got it.
Mr. Chair, I beg leave to invite my hardworking team to join me in the well, with your permission.
Permission so granted, Honourable Member. Good morning to all. Let me, before I give the opportunity to the Honourable Minister to give his opening remarks, his overview of the ministry's programs, let me remind all honourable members of the procedure with respect to how this session is conducted. And I will also take the opportunity to inform those public servants here with us of how this session is conducted and how they must follow. Honourable Member, Honourable Minister, you're given 10 minutes for your overview of the ministry once you finish that introduction, you would move that the head stand part. Thereafter, you are given 5 minutes to respond to each question that may be posed to you by honorable members. To your team, whenever you are asked, if you're asked to speak with regards to any question asked, at the initial stage, you give your name and the position which you hold within the ministry, but you do that only at the initial stage. Thereafter, you would just respond, and you have 3 minutes in which to do so. Honorable members, as you are aware, let me remind you that you have 3 minutes to pose in your preamble to pose your question, and thereafter you are given 3 supplementary questions, which should of course be connected to the initial question. Overall, you have 3 questions that you can pose to the Honorable Minister and his team. You would indicate as well by placing your tags on your microphone so that the Honorable Chair can be able to identify you and your desire to speak quite easily. Honorable Minister, you may begin.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you very much. Good morning to the honorable members of the House of Assembly. The hardworking officers of the Ministry of Labour, Social Security, and the Third Sector are honored to attend this honorable place today to join me in accounting to you and to the public on our stewardship of the taxpayer funds entrusted to us and entrusted to our management during the 2023-24 fiscal year, and to share some of our plans for fiscal 2024-25. I am thankful to God, to the people of St. Peter, and to the Prime Minister for affording me this opportunity. We believe strongly that when taxpayers, through their elected representatives, allocate these sums to us, the elected representatives, and to a ministry, those responsible for executing must substantiate why the funds should be allocated to the management. I'm aware of the time and the limitations, and I'm aware that questions will allow us to flesh out details as honorable members see fit. The ministry, as its name suggests, addresses the social and economic areas of employment, decent work, worker protection, social security, social dialogue, faith-based organizations, and the wider, very important third sector of NGOs and community-based organizations. We use a vision that speaks to our intention to make Barbados the best place to work, contribute and volunteer, and finally, to retire. How we set about making this vision a reality is what we come to work every day, and sometimes at night, to do. I will share some overarching information on the segments that make up the ministry, and begin with our Manpower Research and Statistical Unit. Good policy and resulting good programs must be based on good information. In the past year, we've seen an improvement in the information of our Manpower Research and Statistical Unit, the kind of information that they've been able to collect and analyze. There's a dire need to strengthen this unit, and we are working on this. This is necessary as we work to make our vision a reality. The People Development Strategy section is responsible for developing policy and the strategy as it relates to the nation's people resources. In order to ensure that a country where people resource are the main resource has coherent policy as it develops, it is necessary to have a coherent policy and then a strategy to make that policy real. This section is also responsible for the National First Jobs Initiative and a program we refer to affectionately as Job Start Plus. The Barbados Employment and Career Counseling Service is another segment of this ministry's work. It is responsible for preparing Barbadians for work through career counseling and guidance and assisting them in finding work. It does this through developing and administering overseas employment programs and matching potential workers with employers locally. We have reestablished the program in the USA, and that is going well. We are in the process of developing a technological solution that provides career guidance as well as a skills bank. We are also actively exploring new areas of overseas work opportunity for Barbadians. Maybe the most visible segment of our ministry is the Labor Department. This is the department charged with the important responsibility of protecting the rights of workers. It oversees much of the suite of labor legislation. It is that space where workers and employers turn to obtain information and where many workers turn seeking protection or justice. Much of the work of the department involves conciliating disputes between workers and employers. Some of these disputes become known to the public, but many hours are spent and much energy expended doing this sometimes difficult work outside of the glare of the press. It also takes significant portions of my time as well. We have been able to add additional labor officers to our complement. These officers are in the process of building their capacity, and we have engaged the services of an experienced but now retired officer to assist in this regard. This department also includes the Employment Rights Tribunal, a significant component of the labor justice landscape. We have been able to see an increase in the number of cases addressed and concluded. While we have made progress, we are not where we want to be. We are very aware that justice delayed is justice denied. As a result, we are finalizing a proposal to transition to a full-time tribunal, where 2 tribunals will operate on a full-time basis. We are also about to have dedicated space for the work of the tribunals. We are also strengthening the legal capacity of the Labor Department. This will allow more work to be done in the areas of upgrading our labor legislation, ratifying international best practice instruments in the form of adopted instruments of the International Labour Organization, and reporting on those instruments. All of this is necessary as we work to make Barbados the best place to work, contribute and volunteer, and finally, to retire. Decent work also depends on social protection. This ministry is responsible for the social security component of social protection. In the past year, we were able to do 2 major things. One, on receipt of the 17th actuarial report, we immediately started the process of revitalizing the National Insurance Scheme. And 2, we transitioned the National Insurance Department to the National Insurance and Social Security Service. We are working hard to ensure that the NIS is strong and that the service is a great place to work and delivers exceptional service to all Barbadians who come into contact with it. Barbados must become the best place to work, contribute and volunteer, and finally, to retire. Social dialogue remains the backbone of the ministry's approach to making our vision real. It is also the backbone of the underlying philosophy of government's approach. We continue to consult and engage social partners through the Social Partnership and the Social Justice Committee. The Social Justice Committee has been able to make input into many areas of policy and legislation. Chair, this government is convinced of the absolute necessity to ensure third sector or civil society organizations are in a position to deliver on their mandates of improving the standard of living for Barbadians. These organizations are birthed and led by persons who have invested their very beings into particular causes. They're led by persons who are passionate about what they do, and who often, and if they had some assistance, would be able to accomplish much, much more. The assistance we speak about is both financial and the building of capacity. We are of the view that faith-based organizations are able to collectively, at the national level, contribute to nation building in ways that accord to their mission and the aims of the country. We have had symposia to hear their leaders, and we have shared our perspectives. The communication process is developing very well. The section of the ministry has done very good work over the past year in organizing and delivering capacity building workshops. There has also been relationships forged with organizations like the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados, which has agreed to assist small NGOs with audits and bookkeeping. We thank them for this meaningful partnership. The coming year will see work continuing on the development of a policy and drafting instructions for third sector organization legislation. After this, during the coming financial year, we will have a legislative framework to support the development of third sector organizations, allowing them to do even more than they're doing currently. We thank the Caribbean Policy Development Center, which is the regional umbrella organization for civil society organizations, as well as Bango and UNDP, for doing the initial work and the many consultations, after which they were able to present us with a white paper calling for this legislation. Chair, Barbados, under our stewardship, will become the best place to work, contribute and volunteer, and finally, to retire. Thank you very much, Chair. I move, Mr. Chair, that Head 84 stand parked.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committees, and good morning to parliamentary colleagues and to all public servants who join us this morning. Your Honor, at first glance, when one looks at the allocation to the Ministry of Labor, one could easily be misled into saying that this may not be the most important of ministries. But if one does that, one commits the error of equating financial allocation with political importance. And I know the minister, whenever he speaks, would wish to remind the public, would wish to remind Barbadians that the Ministry of Labor remains one of the more important ministries insofar as it is involved with the rights and the aspirations of workers, so that it is no less important than any other ministry. Indeed, Your Honor, it mediates relations between labor and capital, and that is a historic mandate. That is a social imperative that this ministry must distinguish itself as being in the vanguard of the rights of workers. And from this location, we associate fully and always with the rights of workers, with the aspirations of workers, with the entitlements of workers. Now, Your Honor, when this Parliament last met in this session, in this estimate session last year, I took the personal decision to absent myself from the exercise. I felt that it had degenerated into government's orgy of self-congratulation, and that the important questions that needed to be asked of ministers in this country were not being asked. That the exercise became one of a gentle and playful exercise in self-congratulation. My approach, my interpretation of this exercise is that the voice of the people must always be represented in knowing where their monies are spent and how they are spent. And where there's virtue, I commend it. And where there's vice, I condemn it. Let not any person who occupies that well fall into believing that my own civility and my respect for honorable members and my respect for the exercise is to be construed as some concession to what I will identify as government's wrongdoing. Please do not fall into that error. Mine must be the voice for the interests of the people of this country in making legitimate inquiry, interrogation as to these estimates, as to how these estimates are constructed, and how they will ultimately be spent, hopefully in the interest of the people of this country. Permit me to say this, Your Honor. I left here yesterday learning, and this is not to be facetious, that $500,000 yearly is now paid to a gentleman, and I say a gentleman, who has been campaigning in St. Michael East. I will be specific. I will target the area. I will identify everything. Let truth be told. That he, through his organization, is paid $500,000 every year to sing lullabies and read bedtime stories to the homeless. That is not right. If this government is interested in protecting the rights of workers, as the Honourable Minister just stated, let this government's mandate, let this government's duty relate itself indeed from this ministry towards protecting the rights of workers. And how can this government claim to be protecting the rights of workers when this ministry must now be accused of having been complicit in the collective decision of a cabinet to remove from the property of the workers of this country $1 billion that was in the treasury of the National Insurance Scheme. That money was destined towards the protection of workers in this country. Not immediately, but hopefully when they retire, hopefully when they move in to future years. And it must also be for their benefit if they suffer injury as a national insurance scheme. $1 billion. Your Honor, I raise my voice, not in anger, but I raise my voice in emphasis that the workers of this country must wake up.
Mr. Chairman, on that matter, I can't sit right here and allow the Honourable Member to go down that line without also raising my voice. And Although I don't often want to stop an honourable member in full flight, I heard very clearly honourable member said that a man is getting $500,000 and from this government. And as far as I am aware, and I want to be specific, there is no man, as the honourable member refers, that is getting $500,000 from this government, from that point of view. Now, if it is an organization, that may be a different thing. But certainly there is no man getting $500,000 from this government. The honourable member obviously misled, and he should withdraw and come again. Thank you.
May I proceed, sir?
Honourable member, proceed.
Yes, and I hope you will add to my time as taken by the honourable member for Christchurch West. There's another point of order, sir. I'm hearing several voices. If feathers are ruffled, let the birds fly.
Mr. Chairman, if you allow
Yes.
me, sir, the funds of which the Honourable Leader of the Opposition speaks goes towards the Alliance of Homelessness, where this government does not have any plan, and we are hearing what is happening. I would like, sir, to ask that the comments be struck from the records. It is very misleading to the public.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Thomas. Could we have those comments imputing that funds are given to a gentleman be struck from the record? Honourable Member, proceed.
Yes, and I will reply, as is my right. If the honourable member for Christchurch, and I will not be daunted. I have said I come here and I will conduct myself respectfully and with civility. But let no one mislead themselves into believing that the respect and civility that I have for others in this chamber is any concession to what I claim is government's wrongdoing, government's financial wrongdoing. And I will, as the honourable member for Christchurch West would wish me to do, I will say that the organization is led by a gentleman. I didn't call his name in here yesterday. The minister who spoke yesterday called his name. And even now I will not call his name. But if the honourable member wishes me to correct it, I will say the organization is led by the gentleman who was campaigning in St. Michael East. Right or wrong, I think I'm right. I will commend virtue and I will condemn vice. And I'm saying and I'm repeating that it was said in here that $500,000 is paid to an organization headed by a man with the name that was mentioned yesterday. I'm obliged to you, sir. If other feathers are ruffled, I am willing to pause so that the birds may fly. The birds are flying, sir. I'll rest. I'm hearing a voice.
You finished?
No, I'm not finished. I thought the honourable member for St. Thomas.
Proceed. The
I thank you,
direction
sir.
come from this chair.
I am farther
Honourable
away
member.
than you are, and I'm hearing it. And I want to be able to continue.
The chair does not hear a side, sir.
You don't hear them.
I am listening to
well,
you.
it's not an aside. It's that she's looking directly at the honourable
Proceed,
member.
honourable
It's looking
member.
directly
Proceed,
at
honourable
me
member.
and speaking loudly in my direction. If the feathers are ruffled by the truth, let the truth be spoken. I come here today to tell the truth. And I will not lose my sense of courtesy, civility, and respect. But do not mistake it for any concession to what I say is government's financial wrongdoing. I'm entitled to say that. And I will say it. Member, please keep quiet.
Honourable member, proceed with your presentation and do not be caught up in responding across the floor.
Yes, yes.
Proceed with your contribution. Other than that, we will have to take the correct measures in reducing your time. Proceed with your...
I was... I was
Contribution,
hoping,
Honourable Member.
I was hoping you would reduce the present membership of this House and by asking the Honourable Member to absent herself to leave the chamber. I'm speaking to you, sir. But if you allow her to stay,
Honourable Member,
I am obliged to you,
proceed.
sir. I am obliged to you, sir. Please don't take away my time. Now, we had reached the point where we were challenging the minister to confirm that his ministry, well, not his ministry, I don't want to chide these goodly ladies and gentlemen who are with him, all honorable people. But Minister, you are representative of the government. And I accused you, as Minister of Labor, responsible for national insurance, as having sat with that collective called the cabinet, purportedly in the interest of workers, except that the government confiscated from the treasury of the workers of this country $1 billion. That this government paid 27 million US dollars. Not 500,000 now, 27 million US dollars. In some to two men, or don't want to offend the member for Christchurch West. So I wouldn't say two men, but paid $27 million to an organization, more than the larger country called Greece paid for a similar exercise. But somehow the cabinet, the government of this country found it possible in the defense of workers to take up 27 million US dollars and to award or reward, you choose the word, to recommend, to prescribe to the government something called a debt restructuring program. And the workers of this country are now short of $1 billion. $100 million times 10 for those who do not understand the full extent of the loss to the workers of this country, that the national insurance scheme, which falls under the Ministry of Labor, must now turn to this country, must now turn to the workers of this country and say that the impoverishment of that department is due not to your fault, Minister, because if you plead innocent, I will accept your innocence. But you sit as part as a collective, and you must bear a part of the responsibility in your noble quest to protect the workers of this country and to ask your colleagues and the chairman of your body, what was it that informed the wisdom to permanently remove from the treasury of the workers of this country the sum of $1 billion? Could it not have been in the form of a loan to the government? It wasn't a loan. The government took it. And in law, the crime of theft, and I'm not imputing any criminal act on the part of the government, but I'm just discussing a little law now. In order for the crime of theft to be fully consummated, it requires that the person who takes and deprives the victim intends to do so permanently. As far as the people of this country are now aware, they have been permanently deprived of the sum of $1 billion, Barbados dollars, from their treasury, from their heritage, from their legacy. And Minister, you have been sent to claim that your mission, your noble mission, is that of protecting the rights of the workers of this country.
Honourable member, you have to wrap up.
Yes, I will wrap up. I'm obliged to you, sir. I take it you added the time that the member for St. Thomas
Honourable
took
member,
from me.
you have to wrap up.
Yes, okay.
And you have 30 seconds to do so.
30?
Yes. I'm being very generous.
I will just, in that 30 seconds, indicate, Your Honor, please let me ask my questions first. Please let me exercise that privilege.
Honourable member, you first have to give the minister an opportunity to respond.
Yes,
and then you can
immediately after the minister.
and
I'm sure you will give me that
you
privilege, sir.
You can ask your questions.
I am obliged to you, sir. And so that I don't ambush the goodly minister, I will ask him when the time comes. Prepare yourself, Honourable Member for St. Peter. I intend to ask the Honourable Member questions pertaining to the Labour Clauses legislation. And I will turn to you, sir, and express gratitude for the time that you have given me, and to indicate that my civility, courtesy, and respect for all of my parliamentary colleagues will continue today and whenever we come to this place to conduct this exercise. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Honourable Member for Christchurch West. Before you proceed, Honourable Member.
Mr. Chair, you had indicated...
Minister,
am I allowed
Honourable
to
Minister,
respond?
yes.
Yeah, okay. I will not need to convince you of any civility on my part. My approach will do that on my behalf. The instant matter, though, of the National Insurance Department and the debt restructuring exercise that we went through in 2018, the honourable member's words allows us to remind this honourable chamber and to remind the public that we came into office after 10 years of what could be loosely called management, but a period that really devastated the country. Part of that devastation includes something that economists refer to as adversarial financing. Now, the honourable member spoke to theft, and adversarial financing could be properly described using that same term, because if you took a blunt instrument or a sharp instrument or a firearm and you held up somebody and you took away their funds, I believe that could be considered theft as well. And the National Insurance Scheme was in a position where government had adversarially forced it into a position where it had to buy government paper. It was forced to buy government paper. Government at the time refused to allow much investment in other local instruments. It also refused the National Insurance Board the ability to invest outside of Barbados. And so the only instruments that were invested outside of Barbados related to instruments that were already on the books. So there were instruments in St. Lucia and in one or two other Caribbean countries, and those were rolled over. But no new investment could take place outside of Barbados, and so to get some kind of return, government had forced the National Insurance into buying lots of government paper. Now, it is easy to say that the workers of Barbados lost $1 billion. I'll say to you, Mr. Chairman, that the country was on the brink of economic collapse. This administration and the cabinet to which this person who is speaking was and is a part, even though national insurance at the time did not fall under my portfolio, understanding where the country was, government took an eminently rational decision to save the country, including its workers. And government makes no apology for saving the country. We cannot, Mr. Chair, we just cannot, we cannot apologize for saving the country and its people. If I did that, I'd have to leave the chamber. I couldn't do it. The people of St. Peter do not expect me to do that. With respect to the company that was paid, I don't remember the sum, because I was trying to hear the words through the volume. But I think what was meant was the organization that assisted us in the debt restructuring exercise. And it is my understanding that much of the remuneration was based on performance. Again, Mr. Chair, I'll have to confess that I just fall for good governance. It may be out of naivety, but when I see good governance, when I see remuneration based on performance, I instinctively think that it is a good thing. I am not perfect. Perfection belongs to the divine, and I could be wrong on that. But I'm convinced at this point that the remuneration for the company that guided us through a very difficult situation, that advised us really, not guided us, but advised us in a very difficult situation, a company that has significant experience helping other countries in similar situations, where you're really at the bottom of the credit rating totem pole, so to speak, where nobody will lend you anything, so you have to confiscate, I think that is the word that is in vogue now, but you have to confiscate the funds of creditors and social security schemes. We have no difficulty, and this minister has no difficulty in supporting any program, any initiative that saves the country and that remunerates those who assist according to the performance.
Honourable Minister, thank you. I will also give you at this time the opportunity to just introduce your team before we get into the questions aspect.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. On my right is my permanent secretary of very recent vintage, Permanent Secretary Maynard. On my left is Chief Labour Officer Hope Greenwich, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Insurance and Social Security Service. Senior Accountant is sitting immediately behind me. Deputy Permanent Secretary, the Program Manager in the People Development section, the Administrative Officer, who is also the person who runs our international desk. Then we have the Director of the Barbados Employment and Career Counseling Service. Behind her is the Deputy CEO of the National Insurance and Social Security Service. The Registrar of the Employment Rights Tribunal is sitting in the middle at the back. And our Senior Economist in the Manpower Research and Statistical Unit sits next to the Registrar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch. Wes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, apart from the introductions of the Honourable Member and his team, I'd like to start where the Minister left off when he spoke about saving the country by the debt restructuring program. And I want to add, and the way that we save the country is by saving the Barbados dollar. And I think that is the most critical aspect that was absolutely essential for debt restructuring and maintaining stability in this country. Because everybody in Barbados knows that the way and the standard of living that we enjoy is pegged to that peg of the Barbados dollar. And knowing the certainty of the value that you get when you travel for your Barbados dollar to be able to buy foreign currency and to buy the goods and services that you would want. And that is the most critical thing. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the longer you spend in this honorable chamber, I started coming to this chamber in 2003. For the first time, I have heard equated that debt restructuring is theft. You know, Mr. Speaker, if you are a client of a bank and you go to that bank and says, the interest rate that you're charging me at 8% is too high. And I have a loan portfolio with you that is in excess of whatever number. And based on my loan portfolio, I want you to decrease the interest rate that you are charging me. I am a good client. I always make my payments. I have good collateral. The risk that you have with me is little. And therefore, I am saying that I need a better interest rate. That is what the government did through debt restructuring. Better interest rates from our lenders, local and international. And if you have advisors to help you to go through that system, well, if I'm going to a bank and I'm going to ask for debt for restructuring of my interest, I'm going to carry my accountant with me to be able to show how I am a good client. And that is what it is. Certainly, it could not be considered theft. And I am surprised that the honourable member to suggest such.
I see points of order being raised today. I just wanted to know if my good friend and the honourable member for Christchurch West, is he asking a question or is he making a second speech?
Honourable member, allow the honourable member to proceed.
I see.
This is his intervention. He has time to do so according to the rules of the House.
I see. So this is a point of clarification and he's not making a second
Honourable
speech.
member, proceed.
I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable member, in the same way that you make statements as you did yesterday with no question, I'm taking the lead from you totally. Anyway, so let me go back. Certainly.
Honourable member, let me just clarify that you can do that in your lead up to your question.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, he has 3 minutes and he's made a speech of 5 already.
That is guided by this Honourable Chamber Leader.
We all defer to you, sir.
Of course.
That is guided by the Honourable Chair.
The Honourable member and I respect and will defer to you at all times.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Honourable member, proceed.
Thank you. So clearly, as I said, it was not theft. Let it not go out to the people of Barbados that there was any theft. The Barbados government made a conscious decision to protect the Barbados dollar, and we were totally successful in doing so. Minister, I want to ask a few questions. My first question is about the Catastrophe Fund. Now, as you know, we came to this honourable chamber and changed the rules in the Catastrophe Fund to make it available to be able to make payments to groups, National Housing Corporation, RDC, UDC. And my first question I want, and also to be able to pay for the hurricane straps, and to be able to pay for things in advance to be able to mitigate the problems of a hurricane or any catastrophe before it happens. I would like to ask, what is the status of the Catastrophe Fund? How has the Catastrophe Fund, how do you intend to be able to replenish, and at what stages and how you will replenish the Catastrophe Fund after being used to pay the National Insurance, RDC, UDC, and those? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The replenishment of the Catastrophe Fund is a matter for the ministry responsible for finance, and so I will not attempt to try to figure out or address the matter of how they will deal with that. On the matter of the current status, though, I'll defer to the Chief Executive Officer of the National Insurance and Social Security Service, who actually chairs that fund.
You can say it. Yes, you can say it.
Kim Tudor, CEO of the National Insurance and Social Security Service. With regard to the question that the Honourable Minister asked, the fund paid out $30 million during 2023 to 3 agencies to support the damage that was done during Hurricane Elsa. The fund currently stands at about $40 million, and as Minister for Ministry of Labor said, the Finance Ministry has a responsibility in terms of determining how that is replenished. However, the ongoing replenishment comes from a levy coming through the national insurance contributions. However, when the fund was set up, the government itself for 5 years contributed lump sums to the fund. So as the minister said, that is the prerogative of the Finance Ministry. But $30 million was spent and $40 million is remaining in the fund.
And if I may just conclude that statement, Honourable Member, by indicating that the Catastrophe Fund has allowed us to use the people's money to do the people's business. And after Hurricane Elsa, we were quite happy to recognize how good government really works, where people having seen their dwelling places damaged, significantly destroyed in some cases, then had somewhere to turn, in spite of the debt restructuring, had somewhere to turn to get assistance in rebuilding their houses. And as you mentioned, Hurricane Straps, not just rebuilding their houses, but for some others, putting them in a better position should there be a future natural disaster befalling them.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, Director. I'm going to stay with the national insurance and ask self-employed people. Often, they're required to make their national insurance payments, but they often complain about having to do the forms and the difficulty of the forms. Has your ministry or department put in place any opportunities for self-employed people to be able to make the contribution simpler, be a digital format, anything like that? Or what have you doing, or what have you done to make it more, make self-employed people more compliant to make national insurance payments and encourage them to be compliant in those payments?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The debate we had last October, I think it was, and one we had in July, previous to that in July, we indicated that a significant part of the revitalization of the national insurance scheme had to do with increasing the participation of self-employed persons. Research indicated that there was quite low participation by self-employed persons in the national insurance scheme. So there were a number of reasons for that, it appeared, based on the limited research that we did. But one did strike to the ease of participating. And those who are self-employed appreciate, probably more so than those who sit in offices and work for others, that time is of the essence, time is money, and tracking somewhere and filling out a form. And we also know the profiles of some of our self-employed persons. And so our intention as a service, but more broadly as a ministry, is to make participation easier, simpler, including for self-employed persons. And so we developed what we refer to as a self-employed persons regime, a new regime, which allows for a number of things. Online payments. It takes away the rigidity out of the contributions. And by that, let me speak to an area that I'm relatively familiar with. You will have a taxi driver, driving his own taxi, so he is self-employed. He will earn, as we would say, maybe colloquially, good money between probably November to about April, and he will earn good, maybe not as good, but some money in the crop over period, July, August, late June to early August. Now, the system as it exists, if you pay consistently over a few months, then there's an assumption that that will continue. But when you have no money, no income, and no money to pay, then the difficulty comes when you are deemed to be in default and penalized. And so the new structure allows for payment of Social Security contributions, national insurance contributions, at any time during the year. There is a formula that will convert those payments into weekly amounts, deemed weekly amounts. And those weekly amounts, those deemed amounts, will then be used to calculate benefits. So that the ease of contributing is one of the major components of the revitalization. Now, putting that in place cannot be all, because lots of persons out there playing the trade, and some may not even be aware of all of this. We've redoubled our efforts, or I should say we're in the process of, because we are not where we ought to be at this point. But that process of educating the public, educating self-employed persons to the fact that they can be covered, that they need to be covered, that there will come a time when they will need the benefits, and that public education exercise has begun, will intensify until, as a matter of fact, I don't think it will end. We will need to continuously and constantly inform Barbadians, and the reason why we go wider than self-employed persons is because those connected to self-employed persons are also able to nudge the self-employed to have them participate in the Social Security system.
Thank you very much, Minister. And my third and final question has to do with the digital payments. And I heard you clearly said that you were moving to digital payments. Are all your national insurance payments now digital? And if not, do you intend to move to digital, or are you going to have two types of payments? Or could you expand on that for me, please?
I'm going to ask the CEO to give a fuller response, but we do allow for both walk-in, mail-in, digital payments, so that there's a wide scope, but the CEO may be able to, may wish to.
Maybe I wasn't clear. Digital payments into the system, but also if you're paying back out from the system, those, both of them.
Okay, I'll ask
benefits.
the CEO.
Benefits.
Oh, benefits, okay.
Minister, our payments, for example, to our suppliers, for example, are almost fully digital. We hardly pay via check. Our benefit payments, as new persons come on board, we are in the process of ensuring that we have their banking details so that the default option is wire, is transfer rather than check. But we do have circumstances where people prefer checks. They want to come into the office to cash the checks. Based on their own domestic circumstances, it is deemed safer. So we will still continue with checks. but we are in the process. We have a multi-year digitalization roadmap, and we are working towards ensuring that we are fully digital. Our back end is digital, but our front end needs to be a bit more digital, and we are working on that.
Allow me also to just add a little bit more to that. We are actually in the middle of a program with the IDB on both assessing where we are at and giving us some best practice information that will allow us to work on what the direction is that we should go in the future. And we have participated fully, like the CEO indicated. We do have some preliminary information, but we are engaging with them so that, and this is what we do as a government, if there's a BMW available, we do not buy a Cortina. I mean, we hear that in Cabinet very often. And it is our intention that at the end of this exercise, we will be in a position to make a determination as to the best form of digitalization for the National Insurance Scheme, for the entire National Insurance and Social Security Service.
Thank you, Minister. But I just want to be clear, so you're saying that some of your benefits are paid, a percentage are paid digitally, and others are not? That was not clear.
Some are paid directly by bank transfer, but as the CEO indicated, there are some persons who prefer to have checks. She mentioned persons with certain domestic situations. I'm sure that we can probably imagine. It is not as easy now to open a bank account as it used to be. And if you have a joint account and the other party to the account is not someone who you have a relationship with anymore, or not someone you can trust, you do not want the funds to go there. There are also situations of persons, particularly elderly persons, who are accustomed to checks, who want their checks, and even though as a government and as a service, we want to nudge people into having direct transfers because it is a cleaner from an administrative perspective. We respect the rights of everybody. And so when particularly an elderly person says, I want my pension by check, we respect that.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Honourable Member, since you have courageously accepted to comment on the debt restructuring program and the fee payable, our congenial and warm colleague from Christchurch West accompanied you on that journey. And I'm sure you will not decline to offer some further comment to the people of Barbados. And I will ask you a simple question. Are you not aware that the company that did the restructuring for government also did the restructuring for Greece, a far larger country and a far larger economy, and that they did it for less than they were paid by the Barbados government, and they were paid by the Barbados government the sum of $27 million US dollars, 54 million Barbados dollars. Are you aware of these things, Honourable Member?
Thank you, Honourable Member. All of Cabinet is aware of the costs of managing the country. I will say to Chair and this Honourable Chamber that the intricacies of the payment, the structuring of the payment, is a matter that will be dealt with by the Ministry responsible for Finance. It is not one that the Ministry responsible for Labour has gone into the minutiae on, and I will not attempt to mislead either the honourable member who asked the question or this chamber on that matter. There will be no fluff from this minister. We were aware of the structuring of the payment. The details, maybe some of the comparisons, I did not, on my own accord, get into all of the minutiae, but we were aware that the payments will be made based on performance. And we were given broad outlines and details on those performance matrices or measures.
I did not ask, honourable member, for the fluff. I want the kernel, Kernel. And the kernel is this, a simple question. The cabinet in which you sat, did that cabinet not agree to pay the sum of $27 million to White Oak? Yes or no?
The problem seems to be that the volume, maybe I need to raise my voice.
You may do, yes.
To indicate that the cabinet, any payments to anybody in those circumstances are, Mr. Chairman, approved by the cabinet. The cabinet does it based on knowledge presented to the cabinet.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I don't need protection of...
The minister has clearly stated this is not a matter for the Ministry of Labour.
I'm going to repeat it.
It is a matter for the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance is not in the well.
Okay.
So structure your question
Yes.
to the Honourable Minister responsible for Labour and Social Security in the well.
I am obliged to you, sir,
Thank
and I
you.
will follow up. This is my follow-up to that question. Where you're not finding any answers, I will follow up in this way. Now, this honourable member is very well read. Don't let him mislead you, and he's not intended to mislead you. He is one of the brighter people in the cabinet, as a matter of fact, which is not difficult to achieve. But,
Honourable member, you cannot impute improper motives of the member
no, I'm saying he
based
is
on
very...
the standing orders.
Oh, I see.
Proceed.
I am saying
with
he's very
your
bright.
Question.
I insist that he's very bright. I know him. Honourable member, being aware of an international publication called the Financial Times, are you aware that the Financial Times wrote an article in its pages commenting on the amount of $27 million paid to White Oak by the Cabinet of Barbados, and that they complained that the sum was large and that it was larger than that paid to Greece? The question is, are you aware that this was the substance of an article in the Financial Times? You don't have to raise your voice above that of the member for Christchurch West.
Mr. Chairman, I plead guilty to spending my time trying to defend the labor rights of the workers of this country. And as a result, I am also guilty of not reading that article. But I've spent my time defending and putting structures in place to defend the workers of this country so that when a bill comes to the Honourable Chamber, I will not hide behind legality and points of law. Rather, I focus on matters that speak to the defense of the workers of this country.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Now,
Honourable member for St. Thomas.
today is rather unusual though, sir. May I proceed, sir?
Proceed, Honourable.
I am obliged to you, sir. Now, honourable member, you have satisfied a few persons that your preoccupation is with the rights of workers, and that is noble. That you are not prepared to go where you do not intend to go. And I accept that. I understand your dilemma. I understand it, and you have my sympathy. And I say that in utmost sincerity. And since you are preoccupied with the rights of workers, let us go to the rights of workers. And you received thunderous applause from your colleagues. I'm hearing the member for Christchurch East who said yesterday that he's a man of good manners. Please, please, please. Yeah, but I can hear you. Mr. Chairman of Committees, please protect this chamber from the noises. We have a group of public servants here. We don't want to convey to them that this is a place of disorder. He's speaking out of turn now. May I be heard in silence, sir? The standing orders do say.
Honourable member, proceed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. To thunderous applause, you uttered the phrase, very pretty language, "We cannot apologize for saving the country." And that was your response to my charge that this government raided the National Insurance Fund to the extent of $1 billion, and you got thunderous applause when you said, "We cannot apologize for saving the country." I want you to consider that in saving the country, you may have sacrificed the workers. That money was contributed by the workers of this country. That money was contributed by the employers of this country. Capital and labor joined together in harmony to accumulate those monies. Except that when you want to save the country, to whom do you turn? The workers. That leads into my next question. You brought some legislation in here a few weeks ago, and I think the labor clauses, let's call it the labor clauses. That's how we loosely refer to it. And please don't take this as a personal attack. Let us agree to continue our very civil and cordial relationship, even in this place. And you brought that legislation in here, and that legislation says, it stipulates that you as minister will sit in adjudication of of a dispute, a particular dispute between an employee and an employer. I ask the simple question. Is it proposed by that legislation, simple question, that you shall be the adjudicator of a dispute?
My confusion here only comes because I heard a very definitive statement, then I heard a question which asked me to speak to the definitive statement. Mm-hmm. The legislation that we debated and passed in this honorable chamber, Mr. Chair, does not give to the minister responsible for labor any rights to adjudicate on anything. I'm not an attorney, but I'm told that the law means what the law says unless there is something in the law that says it means something else. My reading of the legislation, and we've gone through it as a ministry, the Labor Department, Chief Parliamentary Counsel, I see nothing in that legislation. When I turn it upside down, I still didn't see anything that spoke to the minister responsible for labor having an adjudicatory role in the legislation. If the honorable member has seen one, if you can point it out to me, then I can respond more fully. But there is no role for the minister responsible for labor to adjudicate in the Labor Clauses Concessions Act.
I thank you very much. Now, you have indicated to this chamber that you are not aware that that legislation places you in the role of adjudicator. And you've accused me of making definitive statements. I have another definitive statement to make by way of follow-up. You are aware that in the said legislation, there is a right of appeal after a decision is made by whoever is the adjudicator. And that appeal goes to a revenue commission or revenue appeal board, something of the sort. I don't have it before me, but you and I have good memories. So that you've declined to say that, or to admit that you're the adjudicator. I am sure you will not decline to say that you are aware that the legislation provides for appellate recourse to a revenue tribunal. My question to you is this: in the event that you're prepared to agree with me as to what the legislation clearly says, that an appeal goes to the revenue tribunal, are you prepared to tell this chamber and this country from whom that appeal goes, an adjudicator? And are you prepared to tell this parliament and this country who, under the legislation, is the adjudicator?
Thank you. Sorry. I'm trying to restrain myself.
The photographer left. You can wait till he come back to smile.
I'm being for you, Chair, to
Proceed, Honourable
Thank you.
Minister.
No, I don't get too flustered, particularly with foolishness. But I must say to you that the legislation as passed last week, last week or the week before, makes provision for 2 levels of appeal. And I'll use the opportunity to speak to both, even though the Honourable Member only asked about one, because I think it's a good opportunity to re-engage with the public on the matter. I did speak to it on Sunday, but I'll share again. The setting of rates of pay and conditions of work is done through a tripartite consultative process, so that representatives of workers, representatives of employers, and the Office of the Chief Labour Officer are participant in setting rates of pay and conditions of work. A decision is made, and the legislation calls for those...
Beg your pardon, sir. Decision is made by whom?
A decision is made in a tripartite. The legislation specifically says that the Chief Labour Officer establishes. This is, and we have history upon which to go. This is not new territory.
Thank you.
I brought this to this Honourable House in 2023 when we established rates of pay and conditions of work for the construction and the road building sector. I explained it quite thoroughly then. I did it again a couple of weeks ago, and I'll share again. Once the Chief Labour Officer, after deep consultation, has set those rates of pay and conditions of work, then they are going to be gazetted. The legislation, Mr. Chair, is so balanced and fair that it recognizes that even in that consultative process, where there's representation from employer organizations, worker organizations, and the involvement of the Chief Labour Officer, the Office of the Chief Labour Officer, there still could be an employing entity or a worker representative who does not agree. And in that instance, the aggrieved party can approach the Chief Labour Officer and indicate, I do not agree. The legislation calls for the Chief Labour Officer to refer that directly to the Employment Rights Tribunal for adjudication. There is, after that, the working out of the legislation, and if it is brought to the attention of the Office of the Chief Labor Officer or the Minister responsible for labor that there is breach, then approach is made to approach will be made through through employer organizations, because that is the way the Ministry responsible for labor operates. It always goes to its partners first. But if there is continuous breach, then the minister who is responsible for granting the concession is given the information, and that minister can make a decision. That minister can make a decision to allow things to continue. That minister can make a decision to suspend a concession. That minister can make a decision to revoke a concession that that minister has granted. If the party that feels hard done by, which in this case will likely be the employing party, if that party is aggrieved, then that party has recourse to the Barbados Revenue Appeals Tribunal. And that party makes its case to the tribunal, and the tribunal thereafter adjudicates on that case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Follow-up, Your Honor. What a convoluted and tortured road of litigation. Chief Labor Officer, I may have missed some of what you said, Honourable Member. Chief Labor Officer, Employment Rights Tribunal, may have missed something there. And if there's continuous breach, back to the minister who can revoke the concession. Minister, you're a good accountant. I do a little law. There is no procedure in the law of Barbados for any recourse from the Employment Rights Tribunal back to a process, back to a situation of continuous breach, and then to a minister who, according to you, can revoke a concession from the Employment Rights Tribunal. The appeal is done to the High Court of Barbados on a point of law, just like the Severance Pays Tribunal, as far as I know. I'm not omniscient, but you're a good accountant. And I just want to say that to you by way of follow-up and by way of advice. And as I asked you 2 weeks ago, please visit your Attorney General. And when you visit him, please tell him to visit this place and come into this well. And he will be asked the same question as to the convolution that now affronts or confronts the legal system of this country. Next question. I beg your pardon. Minister, you did within that what I describe as a convolution of recourse mention as an appellate body the Barbados Revenue Appeals Tribunal. Minister, you may accuse me of taking up your time with questions to which I know the answer. So if this becomes advice, I'm going to give you the chance to answer while accepting the advice. And to say to you, you can treat this as a question, but I would not confront you any further with legal matters in respect of which you're clearly lacking for good legal advice. And that is not to offend government's principal legal advisor, but this remains a legal convolution that will go nowhere. Minister, the Barbados Revenue Appeals Tribunal is not constituted, nor is it competent to hear a labor dispute. You cannot and will not and must not take a labor dispute to a tribunal that is not constituted for that purpose. If you wish to comment, you can comment. It is in the wrong place. You do not take a labor dispute to a tax tribunal. Please comment if you wish.
Chair, my comment will speak to as a matter of fact, I'll refrain from using the term because I don't want to give it any oxygen. But just let me say that the rates of pay and matters related to conditions of work are adjudicated at the Employment Rights Tribunal. The reason why we use the Barbados Revenue Appeals Tribunal at the point where a tax concession is being suspended or revoked is because it speaks directly to revenue and tax matters, concession matters. And so the fairness of revoking or suspending happens, the adjudication on whether or not it was fair or right will happen at that tribunal. We are satisfied in government that we have taken the best possible advice. As we discussed it, we recognize that attorneys at law have varying views, and that even in a court system, one argues for the accused, one argues for the state, one argues for one party, one argues against, and they all bring substantial legal background and precedent. And we are satisfied that there will be varying views on this approach. We are, however, satisfied that it is the right approach. Thank you.
By way of follow-up, sir, let the applause die down first. I pause for the applause. Please applaud Minister when he answers this question. If you have an appellate process going to the Barbados Revenue Appeals Tribunal, and according to the minister, that the content of that appeal relates itself only to matters of the concession, the minister is impliedly admitting that the worker, for whom he cares so dearly, and in respect of whom no concession is granted, is excluded from the appellate process. I repeat, if the appellate process, if the content of the appellate process pertains only to a matter of concession, whether it will be revoked or whether its grant will continue, it means that the worker, if he loses the case, nobody granted him any concession, so the appeal has no relevance to him. It means that the legislation, according to your interpretation, caters to an appeal only by the employer. But we love and care so much for the workers, yet we deny them the right to appeal if the content of that appeal pertains only to a concession. Please comment, Minister.
Mr. Chair, the comment is very simple. If the minister responsible for granting the appeal is satisfied that there is such repeated breach that that minister has to suspend or revoke the appeal, that minister is de facto acting on behalf of the worker. The breach is a breach of rates of pay and conditions of work. And so if the minister responsible for granting the concession has to get to the point where the concession is revoked. He is doing it on behalf of those who have been victim to the breach. And coming out of that, then that minister is able to speak to the tribunal. The employer who feels aggrieved is able to speak to the tribunal, and they lay out their cases, and the tribunal adjudicates. The workers of this country are covered very well by this piece of legislation.
And when, last follow-up, sir, and when you visit the offices of the Attorney General, necessarily so, my advice to you, please invite the Solicitor General. I am obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael. Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to make it clear to the Honourable Chamber that I do not come here under any pretense whatsoever. My morning words are my evening words, so. It is very clear to me that what we have been treated to this morning, sir, is a continued demonstration that the Democratic Labour Party, sir, the voice of the Democratic Labour Party, in relation to matters, sir, of public finance, is still wanting. And no matter how...
It's still what?
Wanting.
Wanting. Thank you.
Lost.
Lost and efficient. At sea.
Let the Honourable Member proceed, please.
So when people speak of civility, sir, civility, it is interesting. Very, very interesting. But
Your Honor,
I will remain focused,
the
sir.
person presently speaking interrupted me at length yesterday.
Honourable Member,
I shall
Honourable
continue.
Leader of the Opposition.
At
I
length.
will
You have
continue,
your
sir.
time to
Thank you,
speak.
sir. Thank you.
This is the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central opportunity
I'm obliged to you,
speak.
sir.
And to reiterate, sir, that this government has been the most transparent government, sir,
Your Honor, on a point of
in
order.
relation
Your Honor, on
to
a point of
the
order,
management of the public
Your Honor, on a
finances.
point of order. On a point of order, sir.
Honourable Member for Christchurch.
I just have a question. Is this a speech from the Honourable Member, or is he asking a question? That's all, sir.
Honourable Leader of the
I'm
Opposition. The Honourable Member has, based on the rules of the House, the opportunity, 3 minutes, to give his introductory remarks.
see.
And then proceed, just like you had.
Yes, clarification.
Honourable
Thank you,
Member
sir.
for Christchurch.
Yes, sir.
East
I'm not
Central,
derailing
proceed.
him.
Because this morning, sir, if anyone is watching the masquerade, would be tempted to believe that the Honourable Member was not a member of this chamber from June 5th, as Parliament was sworn in. Sorry, not June 5th, sir. Yeah, Parliament was sworn in on June 5th of 2018. And voted, sir, in support of the debt holder bill that we passed in 2018. And for the avoidance of doubt, he can check the House minutes to recognize that he was present. He did not voice any objection, sir, to the government's action to be able to save this country, sir, from certain calamity. He made a reference, sir, to White Oak, and I'm coming to my question to the Honourable Member for St. Peter. But I just want to make it clear, sir, that in the Appropriations Bill of 2019, 2020, 2021, which the Ministry of Finance made provision for the payment of the success fee to White Oak, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, sir, voted in the affirmative. And therefore, you cannot come in here this morning, sir, under the pretense that the government was stealing money or we stole money from the workers, sir. It is an insult to the hard work that this government put in place to save this country from the absolute mismanagement of the Democratic Labour Party, sir, for which he is now their voice. And I don't know whether he spoke to his party leader, his general secretary, in terms of coming in here this morning, but he spent the whole of yesterday, well, not the whole, most of it, in slumber, and has arisen this morning to come to accuse this government, sir, of stealing from workers. Now, sir, I take this personally and professionally, because I know, sir, that Barbadians sleep comfortably at night, sir, knowing that whatever money is in the treasury last night, sir, was there again this morning. And therefore, let it be known that the Democratic Labour Party has no credible voice in relation to the management of the affairs of the national insurance scheme, sir, the broader public finances of this country, and even the delivery, sir, of ordinary public services to the people, the taxpayers of this country. So this charade this morning, sir, I think is quite unfortunate because it is an attempt, a nasty, vicious attempt, sir, to suggest that this government, who has been the most transparent government, sir, we laid the contract for White Oak Advisory in this Parliament, sir, in 2019. The Honourable Member voted each and every time for the appropriation to pay White Oak. And just for the avoidance of doubt, sir, just for the avoidance of doubt, the White Oak Advisory did not participate in the debt restructuring for Greece. But the Honourable Member raised the point, and let me just say to the public, sir, say to the public, that we look for value for money. Our debt restructuring that made it possible for the national insurance scheme to actually be repaid, sir, actually be repaid, is well set, sir, on the trajectory that this chamber has voted on more than one occasion to allow us to be able to settle. Now, at a different time, sir, I will ask the Honourable Member, and I will give him a little heads up. Please tell us, or I should say, I should ask through the Honourable Member for St. Peter. Through the Honourable Member for St. Peter. And this is the question. I'm asking, this is the question in relation to the national insurance scheme. Which administration paid the national insurance contribution for the public servants between 2015 and 2018?
You know, I complain...
Through you, sir, to the Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Point of order.
Through you, sir, to the Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Honourable Member, what is your point of order?
Point of order. This exercise... Just let me make the point of order, please. Just let me make the point of order, if you don't mind.
Honourable Member,
you know, you can't be
Honourable
arrogant.
Member for
Christchurch
South, proceed
But they don't
with
even
your
want me.
question, else I shall revert to the Honourable Minister in the well. Proceed
Your
with
Honour,
your question.
I earlier stated that this exercise over the last few years degenerated into a political orgy of self-congratulation. The point, it is coming, but let me ask Let me make it now.
Honourable
All right, let me make it
member,
now.
please address the
Let me
chair.
make it. You jump him out in the chair like a foul cop. And your head is on.
Honourable member, is that the point of order?
I'm not finished, sir.
Well, proceed, honourable member.
The honourable member for Christchurch East Central must not abuse and exploit this occasion to ask questions, the answers to which are obvious. He is asking,
Honourable member, the
questions
honourable
must be
member
genuine.
for Christchurch
East Central.
East Central has the right to ask a question as part of the opportunity he has,
And
similar to you, and he cannot we receive a directive from you, honourable
I'm going
leader
through
of the
you, sir.
opposition, as to what questions he should ask.
What he's doing, sir.
What is your point of
Yes,
order?
what he's doing, sir, is abusing his privilege. He is asking a question, the answer to which is obvious. He's asking the honourable member to say who was the government between 2015 and 2018. Your Honour, you really will sit down and indulge him with that foolishness?
Hold on.
Honourable member.
He is asking.
Honourable members,
Put me out.
order in the House. Order in the House. There is a process which governs these deliberations here. The process, may I repeat, each honourable member has the opportunity to ask 3 questions of the minister and his team in the well.
Yes, sir.
The honourable member for Christchurch East Central has so used his opportunity to ask his first question. And therefore, I will have to give the opportunity of the honourable minister to respond to that question. It is not subjected, honourable leader of the opposition, as to whether you agree or not, or how you see the question. It is his right.
Yes, I'm guided, sir. I'm guided. I was just making the point to you, sir, that you presiding over this occasion will expect that members will not abuse the privilege that they've been given to ask questions, and that what he is asking is not a question, it's a statement. Everybody in Barbados knows who was the government between 2015 and 2018.
Honourable member for Christchurch South, that is there's no point of order. That is what you see. No point of order. He is legitimately asked a question. Honourable Minister, you may respond.
I'm obliged to you, sir, and I will abide by your ruling.
I recognize the difficulty that the honourable member has, and I am sitting here, Mr. Chairman, with my public officers who do tremendous work, and I will not politicize the response, so I am not going to say that it was the Democratic Labour Party. It was the government that existed between 2015 and 2018. They did not pay. Now, Mr. Chair, they did not pay. I am very clear, though, that sometime after the end of May 2018, that payments were made on the arrears owed by government to the National Insurance Scheme. I am also aware, and this may not have been when I was the minister responsible, but I'm also aware that government also recapitalized the unemployment fund of the National Insurance Scheme. And those were some of the things that happened, as far as I'm concerned, as policy lead, that constitute good management of the affairs of the country. When I spoke earlier in response to allegations of theft, this was the government that I have the honor to represent making good on, maybe I shouldn't use the word theft, but what we call adversarial finance. And it was the government, though, of the 2015 to 2018 period that had refused to pay the national insurance scheme.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for the clarification, because the public needs to be well aware as to the voices that they're hearing in this place. Now, let me follow on, Mr. Chair, to indicate that in spite of the Honourable Member's support in each of the bills that we brought here with respect to the debt restructuring, he voiced no objection then. Certainly there's an objection today. Clearly, he's changed his mind. Well, you were present. You were present. And therefore, we can only conclude, sir, that support was there by supporting the appropriation bill, sir, which is the important part. The actual part.
Point of order, sir.
The actual part, sir.
On the point of order, sir.
As members of Parliament.
The honourable member is making assertions. Is he willing to produce a record?
No point of order.
No point of order. We have come to this
I
Parliament,
abide by
sir.
your ruling again, sir. Thank you.
We've come to this place, and the record of Parliament is clear. Now, sir, the government has given tremendous support, in our view, to opening up opportunities for Barbadians, domestically as well as abroad. And to the extent that there are assertions being made about theft from the scheme and theft and all of that, so I think that is quite unfortunate, quite unfortunate. It is distasteful, sir, very distasteful. And let me also be clear, sir, that when we came to office, our debt was over $18 billion. After the restructuring, sir, our debt had reduced to about $12.5 billion, sir, which then allowed us to be able to set about a path where we were able to allocate, sir.
May I raise a point of clarification, Your Honour?
Allocate resources, sir, to be able to address the mission-critical agenda, which included, sir, settlement of $250 million, sir. Let me repeat it, sir. $250 million that was owed by the Democratic Labour Party's administration, sir, during 2015 to 2018. And we did that settlement, sir, whilst staying current to the very NIS, sir, that the honourable member is accusing this government of thieving from. And I use those terms deliberately, sir, because the honourable member needs to understand who he's dealing with. Because this government has been transparent. We've come to this chamber and we have, sir, made all the information available about what we have done in the name of the people. And the genuine question that really ought to be asked is, how did this government, not this government, how did that government not pay money that was voted in here, sir? If you go to any of the appropriation accounts, these estimates for any of the period, they've voted for it. So nobody can't come in here, sir, to masquerade about looking after the public funds, sir, when the very workers, public servants, it is only because of the good grace of the national insurance that if anybody fell sick during that period, sir, that they honored those commitments, sir. And that should not be. But let me ask a question, sir, to the honourable member. Finally, I hope that when you look at...
Honourable member.
Yes, sir. Through you, sir. Through you, sir. Through you, sir. Through you. I hope that when at the first meeting of the Public Accounts Committee, that they will look into where that money gone. But that's a separate matter. To the honourable member for St. Peter, sir, I would like you to be able to indicate to the country the some of the challenges that we'll be having, the opportunities that we are putting in place, not just to be able to provide jobs or mentorship, first jobs for our citizens, but please identify where we are in relation to the rollout of these programs, because it is important to appreciate that given the demographic profile of the country at the moment, that our interventions in relation to the employment opportunities for young people, can you please give an update in relation to the Job Start Plus program, as well as the wider programs in relation to employment that your ministry is undertaking in the interest of ordinary Barbadians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Honourable Member for a constructive question which allows the people of Barbados to hear the work, and I'm happy that it was phrased within the context of both opportunities and challenges, because we will not be misleading the country that even on executing programs that are of benefit, that there are only opportunities but no challenges. And so this allows us to be able to share with the country, because we are of the view that the public wants to hear from us what it is we are doing outside of the realm of the kind of exchanges that we may have had. So I'll turn to the program manager in our People Development Resource Unit to speak to the Job Start Plus program specifically. Then I'll ask the director of the Barbados Employment and Career Counseling Service to add more broadly on work opportunities.
Thank you. Good morning. In terms of the jobs, Erica Watson, Program Manager of the People Development Program, and is this unit that is responsible for the administration of Job Start Plus, the National First Job Initiative. This program was designed essentially to create opportunities for young persons to gain their first job, or those who had limited work experience to gain up to 1 year work experience. And we target those between the ages of 16 to 24 years. The program started December 2019, and then we were getting quick buy-in. It was conceptualized with a great deal of consultation from our partners, for the workers and the employers and so on. And in its design, we tried to be flexible, and we got a great deal of buy-in, but then COVID happened and things slowed down. But since the economy has been recovering, we have seen an uptake in terms of our partners providing these opportunities for the young persons. And although we had that slowdown, we were able to place up to 251 young persons across different sectors. And this program targets the private and third sectors. But specifically in this financial year, we have placed over 100, up to January, it was 105. And we're hoping that we're gonna get to about 150 by the end of the financial year. Our annual target is 350, but the reality is that there are challenges in terms of finding the partnerships. One, because there are not that many opportunities that allow for young persons who don't have much skills or training or experience. And two, because in terms of the economy, the challenges of paying for the young persons, because in the program, there is a stipend that we're asked that are paid while they're working. So that has been some of the challenges that we've been facing. When I say in terms of there are not that many opportunities where you can afford to take in a young person without experience, because their mistakes can cost the business. But we do try our best. We have been getting an uptake in the tourism sector, manufacturing and wholesale and retail trade. And what we're finding is that more and more, as the program is becoming known, that they're coming to us more and saying, well, we have this opportunity, or we're looking to fill this area of work, and if you have any young persons that you can provide and that has been growing. So we do believe that as the program is picking up momentum, that we will be able to help more young persons. The nature of the program, we start with a world of work training, and in that alone, we do help a great deal. We provide them with training in key critical core skills like communication skills, teamwork, conflict resolution, anger management. We help them in terms of career planning, and we have been able to, obviously with COVID, there was a slowdown. We couldn't have the training. We tried to then train, do it online, but that provided a number of limitations. We've gone back face-to-face, and we have been having a continuous rollout of training nearly every month. And in total, for this year alone, we trained about 221 persons, in total, and we do this training nearly every month, with a maximum cohort of about 30 young persons. And then we provide career planning and guidance to those young persons to help them figure out what's their next step. So outside of the work experience aspect, we do a lot of capacity building and skills development in that sense. Outside of that, we also provide core skills training to these young persons because we've been receiving feedback from our partners in terms of where they need some help, some development to help them transition successfully into the workplace. So the program is relatively new. We're learning as we're going, and we're getting more opportunities, but we are trying to increase our marketing efforts, increase our engagement. We have been able to get larger partnerships because the reality of one person being placed here, one person being placed there is not going to help us reach that annual target of 350. It's larger partnerships where we will be able to get that. And we have been seeing that those opportunities opening up. We have, for example, we did an initiative with the tourism sector, the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association, called Jumpstart Tourism, where for the winter season, we try to facilitate as many placements as possible across their membership, and that has borne some good fruit. And we're looking at similar sector-wide specific partnerships that can help us to achieve the numbers.
Before the Director of Beck speaks, I'll add to that in our estimates for financial year 2024-25, we've included a sum that will assist with Job Start Plus as a program, but specifically for persons with disabilities. We recognize that there is need for a specific focus. There are certain logistical matters that will need to be adjusted to cater for persons with disabilities, and part of the amount of funds put under our care for the coming financial year includes funds that will allow us to focus on persons with disabilities.
Afternoon, Alison Elcott, Barbados Employment and Career Counseling Service. In terms of our external employment programs, traditional markets, the USA and Canada, continue to be where the majority of placements have been. However, we are working towards, both markets, we're working towards expanding the sectors. Right now, it is mostly hospitality and agriculture. In the USA, we're working towards teachers and the horse racing sector, as well as transportation with truck drivers. In Canada, we are also looking at those same sectors. In both cases, we are also looking at work-study programs. There are discussions ongoing with developing partnerships that would allow persons to be able to enroll in educational institutions that would give them the opportunity to expand their skills and at the same time gain a work experience, which obviously then would benefit to, in terms of returning to Barbados. Those are the opportunities that we are pursuing. We're also working with exploring opportunities in the Isle of Man, still in the very early stages of those discussions. In terms of the challenges, one of the major challenges that we have is the limited human resources within the liaison officers in both Canada and the USA. Given the size of those countries, just having a small staff to reach out to the various provinces and states makes it difficult to be able to take advantage of all of the potential opportunities that's there. In terms of agriculture programs in both Canada and the USA, penetrating the markets is a bit of a challenge because a lot of the farmers have existing relationships, and it is difficult to break those connections with the countries that they have. And in addition to that, the cost of Barbadians traveling to those countries can be not as competitive as from some of the Central and Latin American countries, particularly where in the US, for example, they have put in place, the US government has put in place a federal program to support employing persons from what they call the Northern Triangle. So those are some of the main challenges that we face. If we can adjust transportation costs, we might be a little bit more competitive. That could then create another opportunity.
And Mr. Chair, to just wrap the response, I want to use the opportunity, and will use the opportunity, to say something to wider Barbados that we say to those who we are either sending on as part of the Job Start Plus or as workers overseas. There is sometimes, and maybe too often, a challenge with approach to work, approach to life, interpersonal relations. The program manager spoke to the amount of training that we do. But I want to say to this chamber and to Barbadians, if these programs are going to be successful, those who participate will have to pave a good wicket. If you are included in the program and you quote unquote misbehave, then you make it difficult for the employer to think about engaging further. That happens both locally with Job Start Plus as well as with our overseas programs, and I thought I needed to use the opportunity to say that we've had a few challenges with respect to interpersonal relationships and challenges. We have to make sure, the participants have to make sure that they do not burn down the ladder. They do not burn up the bridge. We have to make sure that we comport and deport ourselves properly so that employers will be willing to continue in these programs.
Thank you very much, Minister. I really must commend you for your patience. And I recognize that our exchange this morning here have been quite spicy, but I would indicate that part of the challenges that perhaps some of the employers face with respect to this program that the Barbados Labour Party conceived, some of their challenges was because of the $1.9 billion that was owed to a range of businesses from the last administration, therefore making it particularly challenging to see the kind of success that we had initially envisaged, because at that time, and I want to make it clear through you, Mr. Chair, when we came to government trying to rescue this country, that this specific intervention that I just asked about in my previous question was one of the mission critical, part of the mission critical agenda, because we recognize that there was a lack of opportunity within the context of the economy, domestic economy, for employment. And as much as we have set a program in place to settle, sir, settle the monies that were owed to the private sector, businesses and individuals, sir, people were quite hesitant because as far as people are concerned, it's the government. And if the government didn't pay me before, sir, they weren't sure how they were going to be paid moving forward. So I know that now that we have settled, we have settled.
Your Honor, point of order, sir. What does this have to do with the portfolio of labor? Your Honor, that's my intervention. What does this speech have to do with labor? The Honourable member for St. Peter has already declined to answer on matters of finance.
No point of order. Proceed, Honourable member.
Again, sir, you see, and this is leading into my third question, because if you don't understand, sir, policy coherence, sir, policy coherence, sir. No wonder people are left scratching their heads at the end of any term of the Democratic Labour Party, sir, because
He's
there's no
addressing me or
policy
you, sir?
coherence, sir. The reality of it, sir, is the lack of success in getting people to take on young people for opportunities, sir, is because of their experience with the previous administration with being paid. And they were effectively financially embarrassed. So I know that now that we have settled that, sir, and we've gotten past COVID, I hope that the ministry will be able now to be able to go and re-engage in a much more substantive way, given that those things have been settled, which would allow the very small businesses to provide a small opportunity. I know the honourable member may not be aware of those types of things because it is clear that that party has long left the Labour part out of their conception. But this is a very important program, sir, an important program for government's BERT agenda. And I segue into the Labour clauses discussion because just to remind the chamber, sir, that tax policy, yes, is the domain of the Ministry of Finance, sir. It is. However, as government, we delegate and liaise with certain ministries who are direct contacts in relation to the specific suite of incentives or whatever that may be afforded to participants within those sectors. But in each and every sector, sir, whether it's agriculture, whether it is tourism, whether it is manufacturing, sir, whether it is what was international business or any other thing, sir, the one thing that is cross-cutting, sir, across all of those is labor. It is labor, sir. And I thought it was pellucidly clear, certainly to me, made by the Honourable Member for St. Peter, as to what the intent of this government was. But I will ask him to just bear with me, because I know that it is the Lenten season. You have demonstrated a huge amount of patience so far, Honourable Member for St. Peter. So I would beg your indulgence, Honourable Member, to please explain to this Honourable Chamber, once again, and for the benefit of the country, why this Barbados Labour Party, in the interest of ordinary people, has set about a path to ensure that our tax policy, our labour policy, our investment policy is not just conducive, but consistent with this party's mandate, sir, of enfranchising people and making sure that ordinary people in this country, sir, can earn a decent living, be able to support their families, and not have to worry, sir, about people taking advantage of their position in terms of the labor that they provide. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I started my initial remarks speaking to social and economic, because it is sometimes easy to think of the ministry responsible for labor as concerned only with social and not appreciating the intersection and the intersectionality of our approach. The Honourable Member Chair used the term coherence, and as a Ministry of Labour, since the middle of 2018, we have taken the view that all of government must speak to the mission of government, so that, given our very deep roots with respect to workers' rights, the fact that we came out, we were formed, we were birthed out of the 1937 uprising, we have never lost sight of that. And we've come to office to re-engage, because we had been out of office for quite, for 10 years. We came to office to re-engage, and one of the principles underlying the re-engagement is to make sure that all of our economic and social policies are going in the same direction, that they're working in harmony. And that is why it was not difficult for us first to, with respect to labor clauses, to establish rates of pay and conditions of work in the construction sector. It was not difficult because construction is a major component of economic activity, and it is one that we encourage. We also have to be clear and to be sure that the work of that sector upholds the tenets that we stand for as a party in government, and so to make sure that there is, one, no exploitation of workers, and two, that mistreatment or substandard treatment of workers does not allow one employer to get an advantage over another, which is one of the key areas that labor clauses speaks to. We came together with our social partners and set the rates and established conditions of work minimum for the industry. We did it, like I indicated earlier, after full consultation. That thinking also allowed us to be able to move to the concessions legislation. And so the idea of coherence in our policy, I think it is important for the country to know that we encourage economic activity. We want economic activity. We want businesses to start and to thrive. We believe in sharing burdens and sharing bounties. And that is not just some glib phrase. That is said as a Bajanism so that we understand that sometimes there are difficulties and sometimes there are times when, you can let go your hand. All of us are in this together. So the government's policy will not be anti-business. It will not be anti-employer. It will not be anti-worker either. And so we pull together our policy framework that allows. And that is the reason why, for example, even in the Job Start Plus program, there is provision when we ask small businesses and third sector organizations to take job starters, as we refer to those young people, we subsidize the stipend. We ask larger businesses to pay the full stipend, but for the very small ones, we subsidize. And it is out of our sense of partnership, out of our sense that the development of the country is a joint enterprise and a joint exercise. And so we work together, both to build businesses, to build workers, and to make sure that one does not benefit at the expense of the other.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Member for St. James North. For Christchurch East.
I defer to age, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. To firstly follow on, Honourable Minister, from the response of your program manager in terms of speaking of the Job Start program. And of course, I think that all of us, honourable members in this chamber, and I would want to certainly include the Honourable Leader of the Opposition in this regard, recognize that training of our young people is in skills, in having them acquire skills, is an essential part of one of the challenges that we face in this country. And that this is the type of program, and we also have similar programs in the Ministry of the Honourable Member for St. John, giving what I like to call a third opportunity to our people, third or even fourth to our young people to develop skills and vocational training so that they can sustain themselves. Of course, we have free education at source in this country, and in particular, free tertiary education, again, at the University of the West Indies and at BCC, which the last Democratic Labour Party administration so horrendously took away from Barbados, and which this administration restored again in June or July, I think it was 2018, very shortly after we came back into governance of this country through the now Deputy Prime Minister and Honourable Member for St. Michael South East as Minister of Education. And I want to suggest, Honourable Minister, that this is a program, this Job Starts program, that we as parliamentarians should even invest more funds and capacity in it. The programs officer spoke about aiming for 350 persons to be trained on an annual basis. And I certainly accept the challenge of the business community in terms of capacity of taking in more persons to get more skills. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central spoke of the challenge there, with the businesses owed almost $2 billion by the previous Democratic administration in VAT arrears and tax refunds. But I am wondering, Honourable Minister, if, and I commend, of course, our member for St. Peter, the thrust towards including persons with disabilities in this program. Of course, that is in the national policy document of the, to improve the lives of persons with disabilities that was formulated last year. But I would want to put for your consideration, Honourable Minister, the creation of incentives, and obviously that's the purview of the Ministry of Finance, the creative of incentives to business places to employ more persons in this short-term training program. Could be tax breaks, tax concessions. I'm sure there's enough creativity in the Ministry of Finance, both at the political level and at the technocrat level, to have this done. And in terms of persons with disabilities, training and future employment, that certainly recommendation is within the policy, national policy for persons with disabilities. Because we all recognize, and we hear young people often saying this, that, boy, the job requires someone with experience, but at age 20 or 21, how you expect that I have experience? I might have a qualification, you might have the 5 CXCs, you may even have the associate degree from BCC or the Polytechnic, but how are you going to have the experience? And if the job requires experience, we have to find a creative way to have our constituents, because these are real people that facing day-to-day challenges, to give them the opportunity. And if that opportunity entails then giving some businesses some kind of incentive to train, help train more of these people, more of our people, more young people, to give them, as I call it, as I said, the third or fourth chance in life. I think that that's what has to be done. But my question, Honourable Chairman, my first question relates to the issue of full freedom of movement of CARICOM nationals on our local labour market. Just last week, an amendment to the CARICOM Skills National legislation went through this lower house. I don't believe that it has gone through the Senate yet, to move towards full freedom of CARICOM nationals, something, of course, that was envisaged by the creators of the CARICOM project a long time ago. And when we brought in the revised Treaty of Chagaramas almost 20 years ago, sir. And we know, sir, that Barbados has benefited more than any other country in terms of foreign exchange earnings from other CARICOM nations in terms of our exports exceeding imports from other CARICOM nations and in terms of goods, but also in terms of services, sir. A higher percentage of Barbadians have gone to other CARICOM countries from pre-colonial time, from pre-independence times, and found employment in other countries. And this is of benefit to us, and I commend the administration. I was not here last week to participate in the debate, sir. I was overseas, but I saw, for example, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition speak towards the impact of labour, how this amendment would impact labour, sir, in Barbados. And sir, there's no question of that, because the Caribbean Congress of Labour has been involved in these discussions from the start of this CARICOM project, sir. So I'm not sure that the Honourable Leader of Opposition was aware of that fact. But Honourable Minister, how do you see, you may wish to comment on my first part in terms of increasing the capacity by creative means for the Job Start program, but also I wish to give you the opportunity to inform the people of Barbados through this Parliament, sir, the impact of full freedom of movement, CARICOM nationals, on our local labour market, and how, sir, it would benefit our people, our citizens, and you know, especially within the context of a situation where right now we have to be importing people even from Colombia, sir, whose first language is not English, to assist in the construction industry, for example. I thank you, Honourable Chairman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. With respect to the first question on incentives for employers, we have had discussions on this matter. I indicated earlier that we do participate in the provision of stipends for third sector organizations, as well as very small businesses, sole traders, tradespersons, craftspersons. Government participates in assisting in providing stipends for persons employed in those areas. With respect to those in larger businesses who could take larger numbers of persons, we do have a challenge. We continue to appeal to their understanding of their commitment to the country within which they operate and the communities in which they operate. But we have not taken our minds away from the development of some suitable incentive if all else fails. So I want to give the assurance that the ministry is pursuing engagement and is keeping all of its options open with respect to maximizing the number of young people who participate in the program, knowing that there may come the time where even larger businesses that we would maybe intuitively think should be engaging persons almost automatically, we have to reach out to them. We have to make sure that this works. I also want, in answering or speaking to that, mention, because the Honourable Member spoke to training, and I'm going to use that to come to free movement, but particularly with construction, which is the area mentioned by the Honourable Member. We have trained through World of Work training a significantly larger number than those persons who we have placed in the Job Start Plus program. We do not see that training as wasted, even though persons have not benefited from an attachment. That comes out of what has become a stark realization that many of our people do not know how to operate in a work environment and create, in some cases, significant difficulties for other workers and for employers. And so any training that we do, we see it as funds well invested. I started my remarks by saying that it is our intention to account to the public, to Barbadians, on our stewardship. And so we have funds in our estimates for these training programs. And in spite of the fact that we may not be able, or so far, we have not been able to place the 350 per year as is our goal, we continue resolutely on our word of work training, on our psychosocial counseling, so that young people, whenever the opportunities arise, will be able to take effective grasp of those opportunities. Now, those opportunities, sorry, not those opportunities, those mindsets really came to the fore in a consultation we had a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, with the construction sector. And in that sector, there is a cry across size of entities about the quality of worker with respect to skill level, but I think maybe either just as importantly or slightly more importantly, the approach to work. And one of the colleagues here was in that meeting as well. So that is something we have to deal with. But in construction, we've seen, as the Honourable Member indicated, persons from South American countries being involved. And that is because while there are persons in Barbados who are not employed, many of those persons do not want particular jobs. And so even if there are jobs available in specific areas, they are not taking advantage of the opportunities. The Ministry of Labor's philosophy is grounded in a regional philosophy. It understands that Barbados is part of a Caribbean civilization. It recognizes that Barbados cannot develop to its full potential on its own. And so the engaging at the level of free movement across the region, we believe will be beneficial not only to us, but beneficial to the rest of the region. Much of our trade is with the region. When I was wearing another hat previous to being a member of parliament, our fourth largest source market for arrivals, visit arrivals, was the Caribbean. And so there is a symbiotic relationship that we have to do our part as the ministry responsible for labor and the rest of our portfolio to make sure happens. Now, in that regard, as we speak to rights of persons, have been developing, and the Chief Labor Officer has been leading on this, by revising a migrant labor protocol so that we are clear as to the rights, as to responsibilities, as to protections for persons who are coming to our shores. We do not envisage in our ministry that there will be, for example, an emptying out of a neighboring country and all the persons coming to Barbados. We know what the situation is with respect to Haiti, and I think the chamber knows, and maybe some in the public do, know that Haiti is not part of this iteration of full free movement. So we are not of the view that there will be damage done to the labor market, to the local labor market, by full free movement of CARICOM nationals. All member states are working toward putting whatever structures need to be put in place so that we can monitor and so that we can assess. This ministry, like the broader government that it is a part of, is never of the view that a step may necessarily be perfectly executed on the first step, but we believe that first steps have to be made. If we recognize at any point that we have to modify the step, then we will do that. We're prepared to do that, because that is what good governance, good management is about. You make the best decision possible at that point in time, and when there is further information and all is well, you continue. If adjustments have to be made, we continue. But we see no challenge with the matter of full free movement of CARICOM nationals across CARICOM member states.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister. And I wish to place on record, my agreement with the thrust of the Job First program in terms of its course, as enunciated by the program manager. Cohorts such as anger management, conflict resolution, teamwork, proper attitude towards work. All those are so important in today's age. The honourable members, especially of the city and St. John, attended the opening of very similar program that I have, and I'm conducting right now every Saturday among my constituents through my foundation, the Clarkson Foundation Inc. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, because these are so important, and I think the Honourable Minister of Education as well would agree, because I know that her ministry within its capacity to reform education in this country, to transform it, in fact, is also looking at including those very vital aspects in curriculum of our schools, which they ought to have been in there a long time ago, in my submission. But Honourable Minister, I would like you to address your attention in terms of the Employment Rights Tribunal. In your opening, you correctly spoke that justice delayed is justice denied. Not only attorneys at law know that, but even more so ordinary people. And I know that when this administration first took over governance again of this country in 2018, I think there was a backlog of about 269 cases before the Employment Rights Tribunal that had not yet started. I know that that figure was decreased. Perhaps I would invite you, Honourable Minister, to say how many cases are now backlogged before the tribunal. But I wish to give you the opportunity to speak in more detail as to the plans in terms of policy for that tribunal. You spoke about consideration being given to 2 full-time tribunals. I certainly will support that, sir. It is difficult to have just part-time attorneys, full-time, attorneys at law who are in practice, being chairpersons of these tribunals. And of course, the legislation says that the chair, correctly so, has to be an attorney at law of at least 7 years experience. And I speak as well as a former chairman, long time ago, 30 years ago, of Severance Payments Tribunal. It is difficult to fundamentally decrease the backlog of the cases before the tribunal by just having attorneys at law who are also practicing. So I support the consideration, and certainly I would wish to urge the move to have 2 full-time tribunals, to have a locality for the tribunal, sir. And we know that the immediate past chairman of the tribunal spoke publicly on that need to give support in terms of the technical aspect to these tribunals, because they're so important. Someone who has been allegedly unfairly dismissed from their employment, they're out of work for a good few months, they need compensation. And they not only need a judgment by the tribunal in their favor if the facts on the balance of probability so lend themselves towards, but they need the award too. So question of enforceability of the award needs to be looked at within a 2 or 3 month period, sir. And if the award isn't paid within that time, interest to accrue on the quantum of the award. We know that the tribunal is without an appointed chairman. So I'm assuming, sir, and I give you the opportunity to speak towards that when chairman, substantive chairman, may be appointed so that the work of what is an extremely important tribunal within the legislation, it has the power and authority of the magistrate's court, can be running at full speed again, and where the matters, claims of our constituents before this tribunal for wrongful dismissal could be adjudicated on, and where appropriate, our constituents can be paid their just compensation under the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, and one more intervention after this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member. That was quite a long one. So I'm going to answer what I think is the essence of what you were referring to. I think at the beginning you spoke to the need, but maybe this was not your question, but it gives me an opportunity to say something. Following on from the work we are doing in training young people for work, we recognize that there are psychosocial issues and it seems some mental health issues as well. And in addition to the work being done by the unit with this training, we've also reached out to the Ministry of Education, the ministry responsible for education, and members of our faith-based organizations have, for some years now, volunteered their services, and we are awaiting the Ministry of Education's finalizing of the terms, the structure, how this will work. But it is absolutely important, and I think it's necessary to actually mention it here. There are too many issues out there with our young workers, and the ministry is grateful that the Honourable Member who just spoke is in his own way assisting in the effort. But we are dealing with it both from the employment perspective, but also from the perspective of our responsibility for religious affairs. With respect to the Employment Rights Tribunal, the Chamber should be informed that Cabinet has approved drafting instructions for rules that would assist in the good functioning of the Employment Rights Tribunal. Those drafting instructions, are before the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel. We have been given the assurance that we will get the first draft in the not too distant future, meaning before the end of this fiscal year. So in another few weeks, we should have the rules, the first draft, and as is our custom, those rules as a bill, which is probably what it will be shared with our partners, and our partners will have the ability to make input. I should probably say, given my recent experience with persons in and out of this chamber using a first draft that goes for discussion, to say that that is where we are at. I just want to caution all that when we put out a draft, that is what it is. It will be a draft. It may not be fully what we want, but the draft is to allow for discussion. That draft will be published in the not too distant future. The matter of the appointment of a tribunal chair at the moment, now the structure is 1 chair, 2 deputy chairs. Each of those 3 persons chairs a tribunal. At the moment, there are 2 tribunal chairs working and delivering judgments. As a matter of fact, we had one very recently on, I think it was our first discrimination case. And that was, persons would have seen that in the media. Replacing the substantive chair will take place within the context of moving to a full-time tribunal. We have to get the final decision on that. We have discussed it both internally and with the Ministry of Finance. The ultimate decision comes as a cabinet decision. We are in the final stages of preparing that cabinet paper, and that cabinet paper will go to the cabinet. But based on our preliminary discussions, we are of the view that the cabinet is addendum with us on the matter that we need to move to a full-time tribunal, sufficient that that decision is made. Then it influences our recruitment of chairs. It makes no sense recruiting at this point when we're so close to moving to a full-time, where a full-time will have a different time requirement than part-time, as is the case at the moment. We are also working toward the location, a location where the tribunal, as it sits, does not have to compete with other ministries in the building. We are in a building at the moment with about 4 other ministries, 3 or 4 other ministries, and 1 large conference room. And so there is the competition for space, and we believe that we're making progress in having our own space. We also believe that this could happen, if not by the end of the fiscal year, the current fiscal year, maybe by the end of April. So these things are coming together. We are also in receipt of a diagnostic that was done by the International Labour Organization on the existing Employment Rights Tribunal. We explored a number of possibilities, including an industrial court, but we decided that a full-time tribunal was what was suited to Barbados. And so the results of the diagnostic, along with the things that I mentioned in this honorable chamber, will form the basis upon which we move forward on the matter of making sure that there is access to labor justice in this country. We publish the results of the cases that were heard. That publication of the cases and the decisions is meant to assist those practitioners of industrial relations in the country so that we can reduce the numbers, so people can make good decisions, so that the precedents are there for the practitioners to see, and we believe that that will also help. I'll ask the Chief Labour Officer to give some information on the actual numbers.
Thank you, Minister. I am Claudette Hope-Greenwich, Chief Labour Officer. The Employment Rights Tribunal, looking at the years 2018 to date in 2024, 367 cases were referred for the attention of the tribunal in that period. And of that 367, 45 decisions were delivered. And many of those decisions are contained in the publication, I think that was produced in 2023, forming part of the jurisprudence when it comes to industrial relations matters. 2 decisions are pending, and 17 cases were discontinued after filing. It sometimes occurs that an employee or a claimant would change their mind for various reasons and ask to have their matter discontinued. There was also the case, or there's also the case where 65 matters were discontinued prior to hearing. This is where, as opposed to filing, the matter was arranged, there were arrangements made for hearing, but they were discontinued prior to that. So it means that those 65 cases were at a pretty much advanced stage, but again, for reasons best known to the parties, those would have been discontinued. The tribunal uses the CMC process, the case management process, to good effect, and started doing that around the same 2018, perhaps 2019, and 11 matters were settled at CMC. And this is where the parties, before going to a full hearing, engage with the chairman of the particular panel to discuss matters, and that is a bit similar to conciliation. And at that stage, those 11 matters were settled. As we speak, there are now 11 cases which are active at CMC, and there are 216 cases yet to be started and to be heard at either CMC or full hearing. So that sums up the statistics for that period, 18 to 2024 to date.
Thank you, Honourable Minister and Chief Labour Officer. And I wish to commend the Ministry for the publication of the judgments. It constitutes a sound formulation of what essentially the case law before the tribunal is. I took the opportunity on one of my flights, very long flights recently, to read the judgments, and I must say that they were essentially, and in a large part, quite sound. And I was quite impressed with the crafting of the judgments and the soundness of them. And finally, Honourable Minister, I wish to speak on the third sector aspect of your ministry and the issue of outreach for philanthropic contributions from members of our diaspora in the developed world. Very important. We all know that remittances to developing countries, CARICOM countries, and ours, by our citizens and by the children of our citizens in developed countries, England, Canada, America, make up a significant aspect of our foreign exchange earnings, our gross domestic product, that barrels sent down and actual monies sent down by our relatives assist our families in this country, particularly at Christmas, the tradition of barrels coming in from overseas into the port for Christmas food, whether it's food, clothes, whatever else, to assist the sustenance and survival of our people. And I recall when I was in cabinet, certainly issues of legislation to put a statutory foundation for philanthropic contributions by Barbadians and well-wishers of Barbados to us was being muted. I'm not so sure where that is now, and I invite you, Honourable Minister, to speak to that and to speak generally as to where we are at in terms of thrust, in terms of policy, in terms of outreach for philanthropic contributions, which will assist us in operating our country, contributions to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. For instance, we know that persons such as Right Excellent National Hero Rihanna contributes to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and assists with that burden. But if the Honourable Minister can give the country, through this Parliament, an analysis of this aspect of his ministry. And I thank you, Honourable Chairman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Mr. Chair, the matter of philanthropy falls within our ministry's mandate. In the lead up to the regathering of 2020, we started our work in conjunction with the Prime Minister's Office of setting a framework that will allow for philanthropic giving. We identified the major areas that we would target. Healthcare was one of those. Education was one of those. There was the commencement of the development of a portal, a technological solution that would allow persons from across the world, and persons in Barbados, to contribute financially. We had discussions also with the Ministry of Tourism, and coming out of that, there was the recognition that persons may want to contribute in ways other than financial, and the portal was then to incorporate persons who would want to donate their time or make donations in kind, paint, those kinds of things. The pandemic then struck, and much of that was put on the back burner. I'm happy to say, though, that it has come back to front burner, has been for a couple of months now. We are at the point where we're doing two things. One is that we're focusing initially, working with the Prime Minister's Office investment on the road project, which is reclaiming our Atlantic destiny, and the aspect of that program, which includes the work at the Newton burial ground for enslaved persons, as well as the digitizing of the National Archives. That is a project that requires substantial funding, and the investment side of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment has been working closely with us to go through these steps that would allow for effective philanthropic giving. That includes both reactivating the portal, and that took some time because there seemed to have been a pretty large slip between the cup and the lip with respect to if there was a portal, where it was, how far advanced it was. We've managed to address that issue. And then there are some other legal issues with respect to setting up organizations, both in the areas where people will be given donations, that is to say, countries like the US, countries like the United Kingdom, countries on the continent, and the continent meaning the continent of Africa, setting up structures. So I'll give an example. In the US, those organizations are referred to, the ones that we are speaking about, 501c3 organizations. And the mechanics of setting up such an organization in the US, we are in the process of actually doing it at the moment, working through the process. And then there needs to be a local counterpart organization, and we are in the process of engaging legal expertise on the correct form that should take. So all of that to say that the ministry is fully engaged, partnering with the investment division, like I indicated earlier, to make sure that Barbadians overseas in the diaspora, friends of Barbados, are able to contribute to the development of the country. We recognize that we do not have all of the resources necessary to do everything that we want to do. We also recognize that there are lots of people, as we say, out there who want to assist us. There has to be a mechanism that allows them so to do. That mechanism has to conform to the ethos of this government, which speaks to transparency, which speaks to accountability, which speaks to the rule of law. And so we are making sure that the structure, the infrastructure that is put in place to allow for effective giving is put in place so that we can have the benefits from that giving. We have also engaged with customs. That is an engagement that took place prior to 2020. We have not re-engaged as yet because we're working through these legal constructs, but we will re-engage with customs because there are a number of persons, including former representatives, diplomatic representatives abroad, who have complained that trying to give to Barbados seems more difficult than what Ronald Biggs did in the Great Train Robbery. It just seems very difficult to send things into Barbados and get them accepted. And so we recognize that that is an area that needs some attention. Customs recognizes that as well. Once we've worked through to a certain point on the legal side, we'll re-engage customs. Now, overarching all of that is continuing work on legislation for the third sector. That third sector legislation will include matters that speak to giving, to philanthropy, because one of the things we want to make sure happens is that third sector organizations in the country are in a position where they can receive donations as well from organizations of integrity or persons of integrity with a similar focus as some of our local organizations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And Honourable Chairman, if you may just allow me just a minor issue. And obviously, the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs spoke last week at St. Peter's speech that he intends to bring new Immigration Act, new Citizenship Bill, I believe, as well, to Parliament this year. I certainly look forward to that. I think we all do, because all of that is tied in to, you know, giving our capacity of Barbadians who live overseas, their children, grandchildren, the feeling and the facilitation to make philanthropic contributions to Barbados easier. Because as you said correctly, Honourable Minister, the impression is given that it is quite difficult and challenging to do so because of the red tape that we have right now. Thank you, Honourable Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg to leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. All members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honourable members, the chairman has reported to me and asked for leave for us to sit again in this honourable chamber. Leader of Government's Business.
Madam Acting, Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the House be suspended until 2:30 p.m.
The question is that this House be now resume or at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against it, please say nay. I think the ayes have it. This House is now suspended for lunch until 2:30 p.m.